Some people lie so easily. It's like their mind runs on deception. But what if I told you the truth behind why they can't stop, and how it could change the way you see everyone around you? Watch closely, and hit subscribe if you dare to uncover the hidden mind. Lying isn't always about the moment. For those who lie constantly, it becomes a rhythm, a pulse running beneath the surface of their every thought. It starts small, a little white lie to avoid embarrassment, a harmless exaggeration to impress someone, but over time, these tiny slips of truth grow into something far more dangerous. The brain begins to crave it. Each lie brings a rush, a surge of control, a secret thrill that you have shaped reality without anyone noticing. And like any addiction, the more you indulge, the harder it becomes to stop. The liar starts to rely on the sensation, the quiet power it gives, and slowly, the line between truth and fabrication blurs until it almost doesn't exist. It's fascinating, in a dark way, how the mind justifies this behavior. When someone lies constantly, they are not merely avoiding consequences or crafting stories, they are training their brain to respond to the act of deception itself. Neural pathways strengthen. Patterns become automatic. Lying evolves from a choice to a reflex. Every encounter, every interaction, becomes a stage, and the compulsive liar is the performer rehearsing their role endlessly, even when no one is watching. Their thoughts, once straightforward, now bend and twist around the possibility of a lie. They see the world not as it is, but as it can be reshaped, manipulated, controlled. And yet, underneath it all, there is a paradoxical fear. The very act that gives them power also isolates them. Each lie demands another, a chain that grows longer and more complicated with every step. The liar becomes trapped in a self-made web, always calculating, always anticipating exposure. Sleep is restless. Moments of quiet feel dangerous. The mind, addicted to control, now fears losing it. They lie even when there is no reason, simply to keep the rhythm alive, because the absence of deception feels emptiness, unbearable and hollow. The craving to manipulate reality outweighs any comfort found in truth. This addiction isn't visible at first glance. Most of the world sees charm, wit, or confidence. They don't see the tension coiled beneath each word, the constant mental chessboard where truth and fiction battle for dominance. The compulsive liar doesn't just deceive others, they deceive themselves, convincing their mind that falsehood is the only way to survive, the only way to maintain identity. Over time, reality begins to feel secondary. The act of lying is no longer a tool. It becomes the lens through which they view the world, and sometimes the only way they feel alive. And like all addictions, it's corrosive. Relationships crumble under invisible strain. Trust becomes a foreign concept. Even when the liar achieves temporary gain, there is an underlying emptiness that nothing can fill. Their mind craves the lie, not the reward, because the rush, the power, the secret mastery, it is intoxicating, more than truth could ever offer. And yet, every lie is a thread in the noose, tightening with every breath, every fabricated story. The very thing that gives life excitement, the very thing that makes them feel alive, also drags them closer to ruin. In the end, the addiction is complete. The liar no longer chooses deception, it chooses them. The mind becomes a labyrinth of falsehoods, a hall of mirrors where reality is unrecognizable, and the thrill of the lie is the only compass. Control is an illusion. Lying often begins in fear, not malice. For those who tell lies habitually, each untruth is a shield, a carefully constructed mask designed to hide the raw vulnerability beneath. Insecurity whispers relentlessly, telling them that who they really are is unacceptable, insufficient, or even dangerous to reveal. So they craft a persona, a version of themselves that seems stronger, smarter, more desirable, more in control. The mask isn't just a tool, it becomes their identity. And over time, the line between the mask and the real self fades, leaving only the carefully curated illusion. The compulsive liar knows the weight of exposure, the terror of being truly seen. Every interaction becomes a test. Can they convince others of their fabricated story without cracking? Each lie is measured, rehearsed, refined. They study expressions, tone, timing, as if deception were an art form. But behind the precision lies desperation. They are trying to survive socially and emotionally, trying to avoid the crushing judgment they believe will come if anyone glimpses their unmasked self. In their mind, truth is vulnerability, and vulnerability is weakness. To admit who they are is to risk shame, rejection, humiliation, a risk they cannot allow themselves to take. In many ways, their insecurity is insatiable. No lie is permanent, no story complete. Even the smallest truth threatens the illusion, so they layer deception upon deception, creating a complex web designed to protect an identity that feels too fragile to exist without it. They become performers in every moment of their lives, not for amusement or advantage, but because the fear of inadequacy is constant, gnawing, unbearable. The mask is a sanctuary, and yet it is also a prison. The mind must constantly monitor its own creation, remembering which version of the story was told to whom, always vigilant for slips that could unravel the fragile fiction. What is most insidious is how self-deception begins to take hold. The liar tells stories so often that they start to believe them. The mask becomes so convincing that it infiltrates the mind's perception of reality. They convince themselves of traits they do not possess, of accomplishments they never earned, of virtues they do not embody. In this way, the mask doesn't just protect, it corrupts. The real self becomes harder to recognize, harder to reclaim, and the act of lying becomes intertwined with their sense of identity. Every interaction reinforces the illusion, every compliment or reaction fuels the fragile ego, and the fear of being found out drives them deeper into the habit. This insecurity is often invisible to the outside world. Others may see charm, confidence, even success. They don't see the anxiety that simmers beneath, the gnawing sense of inadequacy, the panic that reality could expose them at any moment. And because the liar's mind equates their mask with survival, the lies are non-negotiable. They are not just hiding, they are defending the only version of themselves they feel has a chance in the world. And yet, this defense carries a cost. Intimacy becomes impossible. Trust is foreign. Every connection is shadowed by doubt. If others cannot see them as they truly are, can they ever truly be loved? The liar answers this question with more layers of fiction, more careful calculations, more masks, until the truth is buried so deeply that even they can no longer find it. Eventually, the mask feels permanent. It is no longer a temporary disguise, it is the skin they live in, the identity they inhabit, and the truth behind it is a faint whisper they can barely hear. Fear is a prison. For people who lie constantly, empathy slowly erodes, almost imperceptibly, like water carving through stone. At first, lying may feel harmless, a tool to avoid conflict or embarrassment, but over time, the repeated act of deception demands emotional detachment. To lie convincingly, they must silence the part of themselves that would feel remorse, guilt, or compassion. Every lie requires the suppression of conscience, every manipulation a quiet erosion of their ability to truly understand or care about another's pain. The more they lie, the less they recognize the humanity in others, and the more convenient it becomes to view people as instruments, stepping stones, or obstacles in the narrative they are constructing. The compulsive liar's mind becomes a calculating machine. Emotions are filtered, measured, and sometimes entirely faked, but rarely felt in their full depth. The inner voice that once whispered caution or empathy is drowned out by the drive to maintain control and preserve illusion. Each successful lie reinforces the belief that people are predictable, pliable, and ultimately disposable. The liar's moral compass twists. Acts of deception are justified not by circumstance, but by the desire to protect themselves, to win, to dominate the perception of reality. What once might have been a pang of guilt becomes a distant echo, barely audible beneath the mind's relentless scheming. Isolation is a subtle companion of this erosion. Genuine connection requires vulnerability, trust, and reciprocity, qualities that chronic liars have steadily undermined in themselves. They may charm, seduce, or persuade, but always at a calculated distance. Intimacy is dangerous because it exposes the truth, and truth threatens the carefully constructed facade. So they retreat behind layers of lies, watching life from behind a glass wall, emotionally distant from those around them. The very act that grants them influence, manipulation, also cuts them off from the richness of human experience. They feel power, but they feel alone, and yet this detachment is not always conscious. Often the liar convinces themselves that others are not really suffering, that their actions are inconsequential. They rationalize, justify, and invent reasons to absolve themselves. But deep inside, something has been lost. The ability to connect, to empathize, to respond authentically to another person's pain begins to decay. Relationships fray, trust evaporates, and the liar, in their pursuit of control, finds themselves ensnared in a hollow existence where every interaction is transactional, every bond superficial, and every human connection shadowed by deception. What is most insidious is that empathy, once eroded, rarely returns. Each lie conditions the brain to prioritize self-interest over shared experience. The liar's perception of reality becomes skewed. Others are tools, emotions are data points, and feelings are either a liability or an opportunity. Compassion is replaced by calculation, understanding by strategy, and care by cold observation. The mind adapts to survive in the world of deception, but survival comes at a steep cost. Every lie that shields the self chips away at the capacity to feel for others, until the liar stands in a world where no one's suffering matters, except as it serves their narrative. And yet, even in this emptiness, the compulsive liar remains trapped. Power without empathy is fragile. Control without connection is shallow. Every manipulation, every deceitful victory carries a shadow, because the human soul craves understanding and resonance, and the liar has slowly severed themselves from both. The mind survives. The heart withers. Every lie carries a consequence, even when it seems invisible, even when no one notices. For those who lie compulsively, the consequences accumulate quietly, imperceptibly, until the weight of their own deception becomes unbearable. The web of falsehoods they weave is intricate and fragile, stretching in every direction, and every new lie tugs at a thread that threatens to unravel everything. The compulsive liar does not see it at first. They are consumed with the immediate need to protect themselves, to preserve their image, to maintain control. But the mind, once addicted to deception, is never satisfied, and the spiral begins. Each lie demands another. Every untruth must be backed by careful planning, by memory, by the constant calculation of how the story will hold under scrutiny. One slip, one forgotten detail, one contradiction can expose the entire structure. Anxiety becomes constant, gnawing at the edges of consciousness. Sleep is uneasy, thoughts are restless, and every interaction is filtered through a lens of suspicion. Suspicion not only of others, but of oneself. The liar begins to distrust their own mind, their own recollection, their own identity. Reality becomes fluid, and the self feels increasingly alien. Isolation deepens as the spiral tightens. Relationships that could provide grounding, stability, or connection are either manipulated or abandoned. Friends, family, partners, they all exist in the liar's world as elements of strategy rather than sources of genuine human connection. The more lies they tell, the more distance grows between them and the people who could love them unconditionally. And yet, even in isolation, the mind cannot rest. The liar becomes trapped in a constant loop, rehearsing stories, anticipating exposure, recalculating the next deception, and wondering how each choice will affect the fragile illusion they have built. Paranoia begins to take root. The compulsive liar starts to see threats everywhere, even where none exist. Every word spoken by another is analyzed for hidden accusation. Every glance is a potential betrayal. Their mind, conditioned by the addictive thrill of deception, is now haunted by fear. The fear of being exposed, of being unmasked, of being left with nothing but the truth they have so carefully buried. Anxiety is no longer occasional. It is the undercurrent of every thought, the rhythm of every heartbeat. And yet, despite the mounting tension, the liar cannot stop. They are addicted not just to the act of lying, but to the sense of control it gives, the illusion of mastery over reality. But the control is illusory. Every lie compounds the risk. Every deception adds another layer of fragility. The liar lives in a constant state of tension, knowing that one misstep could collapse the entire structure they have spent their life building. And in this tension, the mind itself begins to fracture. Cognitive dissonance grows unbearable. Identity becomes a battlefield where truth and falsehood war for dominance. Eventually, the spiral consumes the self. The compulsive liar may gain temporary victories, but each one is hollow, each one shadowed by anxiety, guilt, and fear. They achieve what they want in the moment, only to find that the cost is psychological decay, isolation, and inner turmoil. The mind is exhausted, the heart hardened, and the soul, if it can be called that, is trapped behind walls of its own making. Every lie that once provided thrill or escape now tightens the chains, and the liar becomes prisoner of the very deception they once wielded like a weapon. In the end, there is no triumph, only collapse. Every lie builds your cage, and one day you'll realize you are its prisoner.